Grand Central on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Coming up, a look at the difference in relief efforts in eastern and western Kentucky in the last year.
Dedicated to eastern and southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 11.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. FEMA has been on the ground in eastern Kentucky for nearly 2 months. There are still flood victims waiting for help. Western Kentucky tornado victims know how difficult it can be to get the help fast. Tonight, Kristen Kennedy investigates FEMA's response in Western Kentucky and how vastly different it is to the work in Eastern Kentucky.
Okay.
Rebuilding homes and businesses in Eastern Kentucky is slow but steady work.
4 feet out of the water.
We listened to stories of survival.
FEMA came and looked at it.
And of sadness.
And they only offered $176.
When FEMA's first checks came in.
I figure if money's not coming in, I don't know what we're gonna do.
We're grateful, very grateful for them. I just wish that they, would come through a little faster because it is trying.
For some, the money was much less than expected, not nearly enough to rebuild a home.
People's lost everything they've got and they go over and they're getting turned down or $500 or $178. I mean, it's just a slap in the face, and I do hope they get it changed.
I hope they can see that this is something that never happened before, and people is not out just for the money. They out to get a place to live.
FEMA workers continue to say the financial aid is coming in an even larger amount than what we saw in Western Kentucky. The organization approved aid for about 6,500 people in the first month after the devastation. That's almost triple the number of households that received money from FEMA after the tornadoes in Western Kentucky.
It's geography, it's the infrastructure that's there, and their support element that sometimes FEMA's, the requirements are not as great as they are from one disaster to the other. And that's why it's very difficult, and it's sometimes appears to be slow, is because we're meeting the survivors where they are and trying to fit our programs and other federal agencies' programs into helping them jumpstart their recovery.
FEMA worker Brett Howard says the organization pays out when other avenues for reimbursement, like homeowners insurance, don't.
Western Kentucky was a wind event, Eastern Kentucky a flooding event. Usually what you find, and what we found true to be in Western Kentucky, is the majority of the homeowners were insured for wind-related damages. And there was a lot of insurance in Western Kentucky, as opposed to Eastern Kentucky, where you have a flood event, and flood insurance is never covered on a homeowner's insurance policy. So there's not a lot of insurance. So you see a large discrepancy in the numbers.
We're also seeing a large discrepancy in the number of homeowners who withdrew applications. In Western Kentucky, 44% of claims were withdrawn, duplicates, or did not respond to FEMA's follow-ups with their initial applications.
In Western Kentucky, their insurance covered their needs. It met their needs, so they didn't have anything for FEMA or another federal agency to assist them with, and they withdrew. We find quite often, more than we would like, that when we get to a homeowner or a survivor to perform our home assessment, our inspection of the home and the damages, we're being told that I never called you. Why are you here? And so we run into that more than we would like.
35% of claims in Western Kentucky were denied because they were in undesignated counties or because FEMA workers referred them somewhere else. Those other places where they may be getting help include federal, state, and local organizations. FEMA partners with the Small Business Administration, the USDA, and HUD to help victims. Would you say that FEMA is still in its early stages of providing help?
Yes, ma'am. The 30 days in, we have over $99.7 million in the hands of survivors as the federal government. That includes what FEMA has paid out and also SBA. So in 30 days, almost $100 million. That's incredible. And we're just now getting started.
Claims are still being evaluated out of Eastern Kentucky, and people are still appealing initial decisions, continuing to rebuild. Kristen Kennedy, WKYT.
The final numbers are slow to come in from eastern Kentucky right now, and that's because we are still only 2 months removed from the flooding. Now, the deadline for flood victims in 13 counties to apply for individual assistance from FEMA was also extended 1 month. It is now October 28th.
Well, we've been watching the tranquil weather around the mountains, but another big story around the country has been Hurricane Ian. This is the very latest on Hurricane Ian. The 11 o'clock advisory just coming down within the last 5 minutes. A 105-mile-per-hour Category 2 hurricane. That pressure's come down 3 millibars since we joined you last earlier on at 8 o'clock. So it went from 965 to 962, indicating that the storm is strengthening. And if you look really closely, you can see an eye trying to form as this, look at the last couple frames there, an eye trying to form as it approaches the western tip of Cuba, likely as a Category 3 hurricane as it makes its first landfall later on tonight and into early on our Tuesday. Currently around the mountains, well, nothing to worry about here. Low to mid-50s out there for temperatures. It is a little on the cool side. Downtown Whitesburg also on the quiet side. Upper 40s already, Manchester and Harlan, and as well as Clintwood and Jonesville, but many of us still in those low to mid-50s out there. We'll continue to see that change as we head through tonight. Satellite and radar, a few clouds, but they should start to move out. And again, there's another look at that monster getting going across the Caribbean and eventually into the Gulf of Mexico, where it looks to strengthen even more. For tonight, low to mid-40s, calm winds, mostly clear skies and fog on the patchy side. I'll have the very latest, though, on when we could potentially see some impacts from Ian coming up in just a little bit. Steve?
All right, yes, much more on Hurricane Ian in just a little bit, looking like its sights are set on Tampa Bay, unfortunately, right now, a place I love very dearly. Well, eastern Kentucky native Kate Clemens has been feeding flood survivors in Hindman every day since the high water in late July. Each day, a new local sponsor teams up with Clemens to feed victims. Knott County Judge Executive Jeff Dobson says it is Kate and others' actions that keep the community moving.
Without her neighbors, her community members pulling together, doing what they have done for people of Knott County and of eastern Kentucky, they have opened roads. They have been in here helping people.
Clemens says she needs more donors to help find around 1,000 meals per day, and she plans to continue as long as needed. Earlier today, Clay County officials, state lawmakers, and business leaders gathered at EKU's Manchester campus to learn how they can help Kentucky make a comeback. The Kentucky Chamber of Commerce held a meeting as part of its Kentucky Comeback Tour initiative. This tour helps to open a dialogue within communities surrounding substance abuse and how it pertains to employment across the Commonwealth.
From the Kentucky Chamber perspective, one of our main goals in this is really of how it impacts the workforce and the economy. We know that a job is key to recidivism, and so if someone is struggling with substance use disorder, comes out of treatment, really one of the keys to their recovery is a job and that support network. So how do all these factors play into each other, and how can the business community help?
Manchester Mayor James Garrison says he was happy to see the Kentucky Chamber stop by to help Clay County in this way. He adds it's important for other people to see the struggles these communities face with substance abuse and employment so they can step in to help. Folks lined up at the Perry County Library today to donate blood. The Kentucky Blood Center held a blood drive inviting anyone from the community to donate. Phlebotomist Kyle Porter says folks stepped up after the flood to donate more, but the need is still there since the entire Commonwealth is facing a blood shortage.
You never know when it's going to be your day when you may need blood. Whenever you're in a car wreck or you have an accident, you may need emergency surgeries or something. But you could always use the blood. Someone else out there can use it. So we don't have enough right now.
If you didn't make it out today, the Kentucky Blood Center will be at Highlands ARH tomorrow from 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. 11 schools in eastern Kentucky were recently recognized for their excellence in college preparedness. The Great Schools College Success Awards recognize schools nationwide based on the percentage of students who transition into college and how those percentages are retained after freshman year. For many of the local schools listed, like Betsy Lane High School in Floyd County, superintendents say that dedicated focus begins long before high school.
To share, early, start building that relationship with the family to help them understand what's needed for their child to either walk into a career when they leave us or walk into college.
Shepard says she's happy to see one of the county's high schools recognized for its third year, and she knows they are all working hard to help students succeed. One Eastern Kentucky city will play host to a new festival later this week, hoping to provide good food, local music, and some big ideas. WYMT's Keaton Hall has more.
A new kind of festival is coming to the streets of Hazard, one that hopes to bring positive change to the community.
The Big Ideas Festival is going to be a 3-day experience of insightful storytelling, creative placemaking, and culture building and community building.
The Big Ideas Festival will introduce folks to local art, local cuisine, and community-focused conversations.
We're going to be exploring all kinds of things focused on community resiliency, affordable housing, entrepreneurship. So a lot of conversations happening at once, but definitely some, for lack of a better term, big ideas floating around.
There will be roundtable talks, a film screening, and several keynote speakers, including the poet laureates of the United States and Kentucky.
Come out, have a good time, celebrate Appalachia, and challenge yourself to engage in community conversations that you may not have otherwise.
The familiar festival favorites will also be there, including food trucks and live music.
Appalachia is a hotbed for culture and good food and cuisine and just awesome people, and so that's why people should care about it, just bringing together all of those different facets of where we live and celebrating that.
And all of the events will be free and open to the public. In Perry County, Keaton Hall, WYMT Mountain News.
Caleb Bailey and the Bottom Dollars and Nick Jamerson and the Morning Jays will be performing at the Hazard Amphitheater next to City Hall this Saturday at 7:30 p.m. The city of Pikeville announced a new chief of the Pikeville Fire Department tonight. It was announced that Lieutenant Johnny Lee Cole is the department's new chief at the Pikeville City Commission meeting. Cole's been with the department for 14 years and was a 911 dispatcher for the city for 6 years before that. Cole's first day as chief will be this Saturday, October 1st. Coming up on Mountain News at 11, the latest on a strengthening Hurricane Ian and how people on the west coast of Florida are preparing for it.
Plus, if you like today, plenty more where that came from this week. The breakdown is coming up, including whether Ian could have some rain for us as well.
7 in 10 Americans say the country is heading in the wrong direction. Just